Alrighty.
Yes.
And I think we are live. Let me just confirm on LinkedIn. Give me 1 second. Truthfully, more than 1 second. Give me a moment. Alrighty. I think we are live on LinkedIn. We just give it a moment. And then I need to just send out this so that everyone knows we're now live and they're able to join. Alrighty, we are live. I see we're live on LinkedIn too. So we'll go ahead and start as I wait for the timer to count down. Welcome, Dorcas. How are you?
Very fine. I hope your day has been well. The sun is out, so I have my glass of water, but I'm great. Yes.
How are you surviving the heat wave?
Gosh, this heat wave, my age, it's interesting that you come and discover the relationship you can have with your water and your fridge. I think that to me has really worked wonders. And
Mhm,
I I have also learned, go with the flow because
mhm,
you can't keep complaining. So I'm just going with the flow, and
mhm,
I've actually enjoyed the weather. The biggest thing I would say is if it's
mhm,
so hot in Nairobi, how is it in Mombasa? That's a
mhm.
hey, that's a
I know.
conversation over there, you know? Yes, yeah.
This is the right time to take leave and go on
Oh
vacation,
yeah,
eh?
definitely.
Weather will
For those who enjoy Mombasa, definitely this is one of those things that help you. And even not Mombasa, but generally just being out in the wild
Mhm,
is a good time.
mhm.
You may not see so many animals, but it's a good time to take a nature walk. Yes. Yeah.
True, very true. Alrighty. Thank you, Dorcas, for joining us. Thank you for making the time. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us from, different time zones, acknowledging everyone who is joining us. I am Noeline. I am a supply chain professional and an operational excellence specialist. So basically, I'm into projects and improving processes. I am also the host of Safe Space, which is a learning space on LinkedIn. And this is the reason why Dorcas is joining us today. So I'm going to introduce Dorcas. Dorcas was voted one of the leaders in Power List of the top 200 biggest voices in leadership to watch for in 2022. She is also among the top 11 inspiring HR women leaders in Kenya as per People Harm. Talent and performance advisor Dorcas Nderito is a speaker and a trainer and a HR strategist. With a background of more than 15 years in human resource and leadership, her career expands over several industries, including investment, retail, training, and hospitality. Dorcas has worked her way up from an entry level position to earn her seat at the C suite table. She is also a certified talent optimization consultant, a HR professional, a DIEB advocacy facilitator, an allyship facilitator, a break the bias facilitator, and a lean in girls facilitator. She's passionate about helping her clients learn the talent management and leadership strategies they need to succeed no matter what this workplace does. She is the founder of Women in HR Kenya and the lead trainer at IHR Solutions. She has a master's in strategic management and she is a human resource manager and DEIB change catalyst. Welcome, Dorcas. Thank you so much for accepting the invite.
Thank you very much. I think when you are reading the profile, I just realized you reminded me during what I was doing during COVID, because
Mhm.
sometimes people are like, hey, when do people have time to get all these certifications? So during COVID, I immersed myself. It was actually slightly earlier before COVID into DI,
Mhm.
so it really got me into that space, which I really enjoyed. I'm really
Mhm.
happy. I love what you're doing. Anything to support the community, I'm always game. It doesn't matter where
Mhm.
it is, I'm always game. So thank you very much for having me. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Dorcas, you are our HR professional and our recruiter. You are the subject matter expert. The audience spans across undergrads, graduates,
Yeah.
job seekers, guys already at work, looking to
Mm.
transition into new roles, managers, senior managers, directors. It's a
Yeah.
whole end of different people at different levels of their career. So
Okay.
today's topic is insights every job seeker should know, and we are doing this with you. So I'll just start off by asking, please walk us through the recruitment process from a recruiter's point of view, from a HR point of view. Walk us through the process.
So I think let me start with first. HR is very wide, and I think we're only known for two roles, which is very interesting. But just getting to your point in terms of the whole process for recruitment, I would say
Mhm.
first thing where it starts is by designing and defining the role. When you think
Mhm.
about it, sometimes people see a role and they wonder where does it start from, or how did you decide you're going to ask for 3 years instead of 5 years. But it's very important that in each and every role that ends up being posted out there for someone to apply, that it's very clear what the role is about, what criteria will be used. And in terms of criteria, it is the responsibilities, what are these small aspects that are involved in the job, what are the required skills, whether technical or soft, a skill is a skill. So it's purely on all that basis. And then the biggest elephant in the room, the qualifications and the experience. Now, in most of these processes, they tend to come in when you're doing job design, or even sometimes when you're doing evaluation of a role or different roles in an organization. That aspect of defining that qualification fully depends on what that person is coming in to do. If they're at a very strategic role, then you would expect the entry level person where they're only coming maybe with the bare minimum of a diploma certificate, they would not qualify for a strategic role. And a strategic role then would require a higher qualification. And even sometimes you get even, for the lecturers, you have to have a PhD. So the definitive is based on the responsibility and the decisions that person will need to make. As you go up the ladder, then critical thinking comes into play, and therefore your skill asset, the technical side, would slightly shoot down and your critical thinking shoots up. And that becomes the norm as you go up the ladder. So some of the key areas that I've always said that are important when you're thinking about how this job ended up being advertised is understand the role. I know, and this is just a mindset we have, let me say generally as humans, we rush down to what the qualifications are for a role. Understand what the responsibility is about, what they want to achieve, and not what you assume. Once you narrow all that down, then the required qualifications become very easy. And there's something interesting that I came across from one of the speakers I've ever interacted with. Always lay down and write all your skills. Skills are not your certification. Skills are some of the skills you've also gained from different experiences. Indicate, are you a problem solver? When did you last resolve a problem? Are you able to demonstrate it? Are you able to talk about it in a previous role? Or can somebody give a recommendation of how good you are in handling such an issue? So list all your skills aside in one sheet, in an Excel sheet, and then look at what every skill is there reflected by the role. Now, why does it become all chaotic when I'm telling you to have two rows with skills? The idea here, and I'll tell you for sure, even as you're thinking about creating safe spaces, if I get the wrong person in that interview space, because they didn't or I didn't look at that particular skill, everything goes off. So one of the few things I always say is analyze and assess yourself if you qualify for the role, and also look at the qualifications that are required. What kind of qualifications are being asked for, and what is expected of you in based on those qualifications. The experience is critical. It's not about 3 years working experience. Sometimes it's about 5 years working experience and 3 in a previous role. So define it and go through and get to understand all that. Once you narrow all that and now you apply, the recruitment process gets into the stage that people always like talking about. Remember, the HR has already defined the role, what it's who's going to report, what it's all about, all the qualification. The person who's applying has reviewed, assessed if they qualify, and right now, with all bases, we agree this person qualifies and meets all the requirements, and they get to apply. As you apply, remember there are those basic, interesting instructions that are given just at the bottom of any role. Simple things, put in either the subject matter, or if it's an organization that has systems, you'll be able to apply through an ATS system and you're able to upload and put all your documentation. Now, the good thing is with an ATS system, it goes narrowing down. And one of the platforms that also is able to do that is LinkedIn. For those who use LinkedIn Recruiter, they know very well that you ask 2 or 3 questions that eliminate people. And from the other side, as a recruiter, you're able to say, okay, so Dorcas achieved the required skills, but lacked on the experience. And therefore, the experience would be a simple question of how many years experience do you have? And when you come across that, just know the person knows the answer. They want you to write so that the system simplifies. But then again, when you apply, you'd apply for the role, and this is the expected process when you're doing an application. That if the requirement is you apply within the next 2 or 3 days, you put in your application, the expected process to follow is somebody would actually shortlist and then communicate to you whether you're shortlisted or not. This is a form of communication. So there has to be an end. We can't leave somebody hanging. But then again, you have to make sure you've put a process flow that actually allows you to be able to successfully finish it. Now, one of the interesting platforms I actually like using, and I've used before, and actually the interesting thing is when they were making it, the previous place we used to use it is Fuzo. Fuzu has a simplified process for any recruiter when you do bulk recruitment that allows you to send communication to everyone or even tailored communication to the individuals you want to talk to. So, what am I saying? When I apply for a role, my documents will be reviewed by the system first, if the system is there, and then secondly, they might be reviewed by a human being. Interesting thing that I've come across when somebody is reviewing, and this is where now you do the shortlisting or selection, is based on how Dorcas has presented her own documents. It will depend on how the recruiter will receive them. For instance, I might decide not to put uh, my clear cut qualifications very clear, where I don't state where I schooled or I don't state when I graduated, and the person will assume I've not graduated. So again, your documents would narrow you down if you'd qualify or not. But again, we're assuming this person has done very well and they have stated everything. The recruitment process would follow that you're invited either for a first interview. Best process interview flow should be 3. Again, nowadays with all the AI and everything, 3 sometimes can feel like a load, but 3 is actually good because the first batch is shortlisted. You all qualified, you all have what it takes to do the job. We just need now to go through your personality, or we need to go through, how you'd handle situations and how you interact. Who are you? I get to know. So maybe out of 20 people who have applied, you'd get 10 people who are shortlisted, or even 15. And out of that shortlisting, the second interview would mean that it's more about, did this person respond to particular questions really well? Did they score well? Did they have an added advantage in terms of interesting skills that you really, really would want to know about? And now remember, all interview process usually are not I would say, chaired sometimes by the HR profession. They can be chaired by the HOD in charge because they're the ones who need the qualification. So even as much as somebody will see, oh, it was the HR I was dealing with, it was the HR who was saying this, the final decision is never sometimes with the HR because that person, unless you're working in that department, you're required someone else. And therefore, the it factor that is being looked for is by the HOD. So the HOD's work would be to look and see among my teams who is missing, which skill is missing, and what is required. Now, remember, you already had stated the skill that you're looking for, but sometimes there's that additional skill where you discover, as you mentioned, you're in projects. There are extra projects coming up, and I need an analytical person, or I need somebody who is really good in reporting, just apart from managing projects. And that becomes a really major emphasis, or even a skill that you have gained from experience from an industry. All those build-ups help you get to move from second interview to the third interview. Now, the third interview always calls for additional people who have not sat on the first interview and the second interview. And the reason to this is these are the final decision makers. Who are you going to be interacting with? Who are you going to be working closely with? And those people would want to know the kind of skill set they're going to have. And therefore, it becomes, again, very critical for them to be part of that decision making so that you're able to narrow down if this is the right person. Now, the higher you go the rank, the higher you have to deal with the higher ops. So then you would have somebody like the CEO sitting in, the COO, or the CFO. But generally, if you have your supervisor, the HOD overall would be able to come in for the final interview. Now, that in a very simple manner would be the recruitment process where you review, prepare the job, put it out there based on requirement, apply because you have reviewed and assessed yourself, go through a three-part series interview, which again varies based on what the organization rules are in terms of recruitment, what policies have they put in place. And also with the introduction of AI, you might find on average you would do maybe two or even one interview, and then it's a close. So depending on how the process flow is, then you get it. Fun enough, we there is it last week, yeah, there was a whole conversation about a six-step interview. So, and this sometimes is in multinational. So again, brace yourself because one thing I've not mentioned is you might have to do a psychometric test, you might have to do a call with an external team that they call it sometimes a meet and greet interaction for you and for them to know the kind of person who's going to join, and then finally you're going to finish off either with the CEO or even with the board depending on the role it is. So it can be 6 steps. I've heard of people talking about even almost 8 steps. So it's a journey sometimes. Yes.
Alrighty. Dorcas, you've said something very interesting. You've said that sometimes there are eliminator questions, and I'm just wondering, assuming I'm seated on the end of the person who is being recruited, what are
Yes.
these eliminator questions that I should be looking out for? Because to me, it sounds like this is a potential pitfall for me.
So let me tell you, it's always interesting when you have a pool of maybe 3 people recruiting you or 4, and they're asking you the question. Be very keen on questions that people ask you to either demonstrate, and when somebody tries to ask you, can you tell us how many years of experience you have utilized this software or this program? Essentially, they have the answer. So it's usually, especially for technical roles that require technical skills, you're very, very keen on what you're looking for. So you always put the criteria based on the qualification you're looking for. Halfway through, you need to understand is your education level. You always have your basics that are always required. That would be at least you've finished your undergrad, and sometimes you have an additional set of skills based on the kind of role you're applying for. So let's go with you're a project manager or you're aspiring to be a project manager. Then one of the most important skills, or actually I would say qualification that will get you into the room for the interview, is to have your undergrad and then you have your certification. Now remember, your certification gets you into the room because it confirms you understand what project management is. However, your different process flows of that project management have to be demonstrated. And most of the time, we are very good in demonstrating it in writing. We're not good in demonstrating it in a conversation when you're being asked. So if I was at the other end asking your question, it would be, can you walk me through, uh, if you have 4 or 5 projects, which are the best processes to include? Would it be Scrum? Would it be Agile? Considering that currently we're already having a bad downtime with our customers and we're already losing enough millions. That answer and how somebody answers would definitely get them to the next part of the interview, because there is a need that has already been raised and we are looking for somebody who can answer that. Or sometimes they know the answer for that particular need. They just want you to align yourself to what they're looking for. So there's that part where sometimes we disconnect when somebody just like, I always tend to ask somebody, have you been in a role where you were supervising people? And people get confused when you are put under a team, and then there's a particular project you're all doing. You're all equals, you're doing a project, but you're the lead. People are not really reporting to you, but you are the lead. Okay. Now, a clever person would find a way around to make it come out that these 5 people were actually reporting to me because I was the lead. And it can be as simple as, because I was the lead and I was preparing the last reports, I had to have everyone check in with me to ensure that every process flow had finished so that I'm able to verify and ensure proper supervision was done to the client's project in order to report the timelines. So, in a way, yes, it wasn't a direct supervision, but the way you bring it out in that conversation becomes very critical. Now, there are other times people are supervisors, but they are still not able to demonstrate because of the nature of the systems that are already in place. If you're already in a system where everyone is coming for your final approvals for any step of the project, you're supervising them because you're the one approving small steps. It may not be a major step, but you're supervising and you're approving small steps. That part of supervisory has to come out well, and you have to demonstrate it. And that's why we're always told, how are you going to apply your answers during interview by using the it's called what, the STAR method, the SWOT method. Though I enjoy the SWOT method because you have to look from within to understand your weakness. The STAR method tends to be a way of shining out. And again, being in HR, we know those tricks because we're the ones who like prep people for the interviews. So of course, you just be like, clever answer. Let me see how I can just, find them in between when they're not prepared. So the way you
Yeah.
demonstrate and you answer the question actually helps you. That's what I would say. Yeah.
All right. I think you've also answered the next question on what you wish we understood. And I think, in a way, maybe you could just shed some light on, can you share some of the insights into the current job market trends and how they may affect job seekers?
Okay, so the current job market trends have changed. And when I say they have changed, it's because of, let's put AI in the picture. A lot of interesting things are happening. And unfortunately, if you're not skilled enough to understand even how to utilize AI, you might actually fail on quite a number of these things. So one of the things that I've seen to be quite interesting is the kind of certification and the kind of experience people are looking at right now. A lot of people are actually looking for people who can work remotely or have worked hybrid. And that's not quote unquote what people are looking for. People are not looking for someone who has worked hybrid. The skill they're looking for is actually just to understand if you have personal discipline, how you're able to deliver your work, how have you been responding, how have you been communicating, and how have your performance been. Because if at all you're not able to do that, most of these jobs you won't be able to handle. And we're not talking about small jobs where you are transcribing or listening or responding to emails. Those things you can over time. Sometimes I think you can do them, with your eyes closed, because you just have structures with AI and you do it. However, when you're looking at programmers, when you're looking at either team leads and they have to work remotely, the key areas in this particular thing is how well are you in assigning tasks? How well are you in managing your timelines and making sure you achieve the deliverables? So they're mainly looking for self-discipline and a performer, not the fact that you have worked remote for 2 3 years. You might have worked remote for 2 3 years, but your task planning and everything, it cannot help any organization. Sorry to be very blunt, but generally speaking, those are the things that tend to happen. Other things that I've realized, there's a lot of certifications that people are doing. You need to hold. Even as much as I have certifications, you have to demonstrate. Okay. So again, picking on software developers, front end, back end, most critical thing is, where are you storing your work? Where is your portfolio? Where is your sample work? Now, anyone who is in administration and all these other areas, they always think they cannot demonstrate their work because they don't have like let me say, a GitHub and all these other things where you can go post all the different things you do. Interesting enough, that is why LinkedIn is there. You're able to demonstrate and walk people through your journey and be able to say, this is the sample work I have been doing, and I always share, because you make sure it's factual, you make sure you involve your teams that you're working with, and you make sure you get recommendations where somebody can share your journey. Now, by doing that, then you'll be able to demonstrate the skill set you have, and you won't be just holding a certificate. Again, remember, I was talking about some of the things I was doing during COVID. So you'll find a lot of people will be able to pick up skill set either online, either when they're on holiday. But sometimes you pick the certificate because the qualification you're trying to gain is for a particular job, but you're not able to demonstrate it because you assume, well, how are they going to look at it? So an interesting thing I remember, there's a time I was talking to someone, a technical recruiter from US, in one of those top companies. And the thing he said is, during all technical recruitment, he has to spend at least two weeks prepping on particular questions that would be asked to the coders, so that he preps and knows how to make that code in so many different ways that at the end of the day, when he gives the code to be done, he'll be able to know it, or he gives the code to be cracked, he'll be able to know you've done it well. Now, this is somebody who is like at a very senior supervisory role that manages, I think it was around 100 people. If he has to do that, if he has to do that, and that is just for a recruitment process, you can imagine the work an individual has to do to get that job. We're not saying it's hard. What I always tell someone is, the easiest way to practice your skill set that you have gained is by offering it to someone else over and over until you get it right. Sometimes practicing it on your own may not reflect your capability because you're only the person vouching for yourself. So I always insist on, can you volunteer somewhere? Who can you support? And also, who is going to be able to vouch again for your work? Simple spaces you can do so. Again, we're on LinkedIn. That's the number one space I'll tell you to pick because of only two things. It gives you a wide spray of anyone beyond Kenya, and therefore your skill set is demonstrable across different quarters, and therefore you can get almost any industry you'd be looking at. Secondly, look at any local place you're in. See how you can apply it in your local schools, local universities. I remember there's somebody who was doing their masters in Germany, and they told me because they had to do a project and they needed to look for an institute where they that can support that particular project because they were not from Germany, they were just studying there for 1.5 years. She opted to go to the police station and just said, you know what, I'm able to do this. Should be able to identify and do your work more easy when, well, protecting the society and all. The thing is this, everyone will always be willing to say yes for anyone who has something good to offer, something tangible, a skill set that is required. If you're going to be a good writer, who needs that skill? Identify where the problem is, apply it, get the recommendation, then see how that can be reflected in your resume by presenting it very well objectively, and then
Mhm.
have a conversation during the interview and explain yourself. Yes.
I hear you, Dorcas. I think that's where the difference between when we say iron sharpens iron, you learn as you train, versus being the village
Yes.
champion. Just your locality, you're the village champion. You've not tried to expand your horizon to figure out how can I be better at this. So as I do understand what it is that you are trying to share. So after we've done all these, Dorcas, the next question becomes, okay, I have evaluated myself, I fit into the skill set required, I understand what is required of me. The question becomes, what are some of the common mistakes over and above just getting a certification for the sake of getting through the door? What are some of the other common mistakes that job seekers make during the application process? We've not even gotten shortlisted, just the application process. What are they and how can we avoid them?
Okay. So two things. I have seen everything, which is hilarious, sorry to say. But one thing I'll tell you is because of the nature of recruitment, you expect everything. So let me pick it up from a general perspective when somebody is um, dashing in and just applying for a role without necessarily thinking through. A few things that I've discovered is there's a time somebody sent the application and they had attached way too much. So they had attached what? They had attached their birth certificate, they had attached their primary certificate, they had attached a chief recommendation letter. They had attached a lot of things. The application had only stated we need the resume or basically the CV. They not indicated anything else. So when you go and reapply and you put all those things, it's just untidy. And for people who don't have system, it's just chaotic because you'd wonder what it is. The simple yet first I would say very annoying mistakes that job seekers do. Annoying because you make somebody start working for you unknowingly. So when people apply for roles, they forget to name their resume with their name or whatever. They just, it's every chaotic thing. So your name is not in the resume or you've written CV. And I'm just thinking, I know it's going to be a CV, so why name it CV? Why don't you name it your name? Secondly, another interesting I wouldn't, okay, let me say 50-50, not mistake, but a very confusing state is when I apply a job for my brother. So when somebody is looking at the email, it's written Dorcas Nderito. Then you open and you're like, Peter Nderito. And you're like, am I the one reading wrongly? It's just usually chaotic. So how you apply, please make sure, even if you're applying on behalf of somebody, just simplify what it is and then move forward. Other mistakes I've seen now, the resume and the structure of it is over preempting on who you are. Nobody needs to know you are your religion, not unless it's asked. So what I always say is look at your CV, 2 pager, 10 pager, whatever pages it is. Ask yourself, any information I've put here, how will it be useful for the role I'm applying? So what do you mean by useful? Will my age be useful? Did they state they want a bracket between, I don't know, 1 year to 100? What did they state? Secondly, did they say they need to have my postal address because they're writing to who? Remove it. Uh, do they need to know you're married and the number of children you have? And this is not applicable only for women. I've seen it also on men. So this is not like a gender card, but generally, what information have you put there? Did they need that? Because if they need to know you're married, then the only proof is a marriage certificate. Sorry to say, everything else is null and void unless a document is available. Secondly, thirdly, the other thing I've seen that becomes very critical is putting your parents' numbers. You're putting your parents' number as number, the first number, then a slash, then another number. And then conversations start and you're thinking, okay, you looked qualified, but now this person, wherever they are, is wondering who I am, why am I looking for this person? And sometimes people say wrong number. And depending on how somebody has that time bath of calling people, you might lose out on an interview. The other thing is how you do your summary and also your hobbies. Whatever hobby it is, please note it has to be applicable to your role. Hobbies are important. They are great. You can leverage on them, especially as you go up the ladder. I mean, for any person who's a chief going up, most critical things that people tend to ask is, what sports do you do? Which social club do you go to? Social club, a sports club, not a bar. So all those things need to be there. And when you state, I go for travel, you travel. When was the last time you traveled? Did you travel from home to your workplace where you're working or to school? It doesn't tie up. But if it's a travel agency company or a travel company you're applying for and you have indicated travel and you say on average I visit 2 to 5 cities in an year, that's a very striking conversation, especially in the tourism space. So it brings in a conversation. You play football. Are you a footballer fan or do you play football? Those things just eliminate. I think those are the things that I would say majorly. Then finally, what you write in as your objectives is what you achieved. Don't copy paste your job description. Don't copy paste the advert of the role when you are applying and you just put it there. Now, good thing is AI is there and can help you do that. Good thing is there are so many, 1,001 people who do CV reviews. But the most important thing is you need to know how to review yourself in order to stand out from everyone. I think that is very, very important. And a final thing I would say is please always remove things like, I remember the most interesting one was somebody wrote, I almost qualified to work for British Council. However, I did not pass the security test. Why would you put that? Why would you put such statements that can bring you down? you know so all those things need to be just removed. And then finally, of course, due to data privacy, stop putting people's credential. Please put referral upon request. It's really important. If you deferred a course, please don't put it, because we will start having, if let's assume you're called for an interview because of your other qualification. Now we'll start having a conversation as, hey, why did you defer? Oh, so it was your parent. We already lost. Like it means you're not firm and assertive. So there's so many things that people put in their resume, and I feel nowadays some of these mistakes should not be there because of all the tools that are out there. Another simple way to just figure out how you can, make your CV look great or what it should have, go to someone's LinkedIn profile and just check out and say, okay, so this person states this, so I should have such a chronological way of stating my records. And if LinkedIn is putting the most updated or your last place of work as number one priority, why would you interchange the whole thing when you print? And you put, people assume because you're reading from the first page, you assume your last details. is your latest details on the last page. So those are common mistakes that are there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you for sure the most interesting thing I do when I'm going through documents, I just laugh. I'm sorry. I laugh, but I always do my best. If I'm able to put it out there and just mention to you what you need to add on, I always make sure
Mm-hmm.
I give it out because that's the only time you get to correct people. Yeah.
Okay. So, Dorcas, I hear you've dealt with a chaotic applicant.
Yes.
What does a star applicant look like to you?
Now, let me tell you, a star applicant, one thing I've seen is they'll always have their names on their documentation well clearly, and even in when you open it. But most interesting thing, it's not a busy CV. Now, I know when it comes to software guys and techies, they would have a different setting, and I always appreciate that. So you always consider whatever role you're putting in. So just focusing on a general administrator or a project management, I would like to see your summary as a priority. And usually for me, I prefer seeing your qualifications as a priority. Why? By the time you're applying, the first priority for me, that would be a kickoff because of the process flow in most organizations, your qualifications need to stand out. When you do not have those qualifications, then your experience would come out strong, but your qualifications become critical. Why? Because most of the roles tend to have a requirement for somebody to have a certification, especially if the organization deals with a lot of either tendering work or project work that requires, as I would say, an expert to do that work. So the expert would require that particular qualification. That expert may not be the HOD. He may have quite a number of qualifications, but the other technical experts would be the ones who require that certification. So to me, it's a priority to just see that. And then good, simple summaries. For me, the role stands out more than the name of the organization. I feel brand names tend to overshadow somebody because you can be working in a brand, but you are not doing so much because first, how the structure of the organization is. So, what role particularly were you doing and who were you reporting to, or who was reporting to you? Those few things tend to be very critical because if I can't tell if you are reporting to a particular person or anyone was reporting to you, it's so hard to shake it off when you're trying to understand the structure of that particular organization. So clarity on that area becomes very critical. And then I always like when I see a star person just doing a quick summary of experience that is not relevant. So experience is there, but it's not relevant for the particular role you're putting out there. So you just do a quick summary after your experience. You just indicate other experiences and you indicate what specific maybe achievements in general you got. And then if you have any awards or any additional training, yes. But on training, which is being given while you're working, please let's not state everything you are trained on. Let's state what is critical for the role you're applying for. Then that becomes very important because it opens up a conversation to be shortlisted. And then
Yeah.
finally, I think one major thing I've come to appreciate is where you are a member or which networks you associate with, because I feel that particular association where you're a member strengthens me to understand what particular areas you use to increase your knowledge and understanding of that particular industry or the space basically you're in. Yes.
Okay, all right. And I think most of this, Dorcas, is thank you for unpacking it, making it very easy to understand, very relatable. So, if we break it down into layers, Dorcas, and let's start from the undergrad who is looking for an internship or an
Yes.
industrial attachment. Very basic, very quick answer. What is the recruiter looking for?
The recruiter is looking for somebody who is completely fresh. Fresh means you have not tapped into a different organization and you have a different mindset on how things should be done. And that becomes critical because it is just a student. I'm looking for somebody who's willing to learn. And as long as you have an open mindset of willingness to learn, it's easy to just get you in there. Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. And understood. Understood. There's something you've said about
Yeah.
the CV having an excess of things, and I think this is where the rationale that a CV stroke a resume is not like the sun. It's not covering everything. It has to
Yes.
keep being customized to the role that you're applying for. I cannot use the CV that I used to apply for a supply chain role to apply for a project management role or an operational excellence role. But at the same time, if I'm understanding what you're saying, you're essentially saying if I want to give a detailed account of my professional achievements, I have LinkedIn for that. And we should be leveraging LinkedIn to basically speak about our own achievements.
Yeah, actually, what I enjoy is when I see resume put in PDF so that you're able to add you have your LinkedIn either at the top, bottom, wherever it is, where somebody is able to click on the link and get to know more about you. When you include that link inside, it just makes it easier. Without that, it becomes very, very hard because when you go to LinkedIn, you find a lot of Dorcases. So how do I narrow down to I'm looking at the right person? Because there's maybe most probably another Dorcas who's doing HR. So just making it's making this conversation and the relationship that is about to start where you're exchanging, skill sets. You're asking me, you need this. I'm telling you, I need that. So I need to make sure it's so easy for you to find that skill from me.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's talk next layer from the
Yeah.
0 to 1 year experience. Let's talk 1 year of experience to 3 year of experience.
Yes.
I am applying for a role. Quick answer. What is the recruiter looking for?
If you're applying for a role, I'm looking at your qualification. Have you graduated fully? Not that you're still going on course. And what experience have you gained? If you've already gone through internship, it's a plus on for me because what you're trying to also do is at that particular point is I want somebody who already understands the industry or a workplace setup, the do's and the don'ts and the basics. And the do's and the don'ts are not arriving to work on time. The do's and the don'ts is the process flow expected for that particular role. And therefore, the learning curve is what the organization does. What are the products? What are the processes in this particular organization? But you already understand what is expected of you for that particular role. Yes.
Alrighty. Okay. Now, from the person applying for the role point of view,
Yes.
what should I be looking out for? What are the red flags that I should be looking out for when I'm reading there's this role that has been advertised, they're recruiting for this role? What
Yes.
are the red flags? I've not joined the organization. I don't have any information about the organization. I don't have a person I can call in the organization to tell me this
Yeah.
is what the culture is like. But
Mhm.
just by reading the profile, what are the red flags I should look out for?
Okay, so a few red flags that I'll always insist somebody can see in a job description is where there's no clarity on who you're reporting to. I know a few things that people always assume is, oh, but I said this is an entry level job, so of course you're reporting to the supervisor. Which supervisor? What's the structure and what is expected? And other key highlights is when you just see somebody indicating 2 to 3 years work experience. It has to be very specific which work experience because for any role you're coming in, there's that either technical requirement that you'll need and the general work experience. So it has to be very clear. And when a JD is not clear, it means even your appraisal performance will have an issue. Now, when it comes to the responsibilities, what have they stated? Or is it, I would say, like a generic role that has been put there that you'll be required to submit every week reports? You'll be required to complete projects within set timelines without fail. There has to be very specific things that are unique to the role that if I'm going to look at X organization, then X organization offers this kind of service. There has to be an emphasis on those particular services. Also, a red flag is when somebody has not mentioned systems. especially for like customer experience, project management. Which systems are they using? These are not secrets. This is not called what? These are not DNA secrets that people are going to discover. Oh gosh, use Asana. No, I will never. I'll never, achieve my project because everyone knows I'm using Asana. There's nothing like that. State it, because then during the interview, people will stop lying fast. People
Mm,
will acknowledge the fact that they don't know the system, or they will acknowledge the fact that they have used a similar system when they review what it is. I also find it interesting when somebody has not stated in a JD the particular sequence on how you will be expected to perform. Your
mm,
performance is based on your understanding. So when somebody tells you in an interview, do you think you can do this job? By the way, the truth of the matter is no, because I don't know what is your quote
the
unquote
expectation.
expected requirement. So those
Mm,
things need to be very clear, because if you don't, then there's a challenge. I also appreciate the fact that nowadays most organizations are coming out and stating the process flow, especially for the systematic applications. Somebody will be
mhm,
able to tell you, once you apply in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to have
mhm,
2 interviews, one, and then we'll close out on it. The ones that are general and they just tell you, by the way, I'm sorry, in the next 2 weeks, if you don't hear from us, please consider your application unsuccessful. I'll tell
mhm,
you for sure the biggest dilemma on that is they have a lot of applicants. They have a lot
mhm,
of applicants, and they don't have a good sieving funnel system where they're able to understand, based on, let me say, 3 or 5 jobs that they have posted. It has
mhm,
been seen that we always have an overwhelming way of, we get like a lot of applications. So you need to get a funnel where it will just go cutting people off. And that's why I'm saying,
mhm,
like for LinkedIn recruitment, cuts it off. And it's very critical to do that, because then people get closure, and two, people
mhm,
get to understand maybe what they missed. Systems are there, it's possible to do it. I'm not saying it's a tailor-made response. I'm saying
mhm.
2 to 3 weeks is a lot of stories. That's just cloud over there, which I
Mm,
believe as recruiters and HR we can improve. Yes.
okay. Alrighty. Thank you. Thank you for that, Dorcas. There's a question that came through, and the person was
Yes.
asking, what do you consider more, education or experience?
Wow. This is like, you're asking, what do I consider more, water or air? This is just like one of those hard ones. But considering the way of life and how things have changed, I would actually say
Mhm.
experience. Experience that is demonstratable. Demonstratable.
Keyword.
Keyword.
Keyword
If
demonstrable.
Yeah, don't tell me, I don't know, in 2018 I could do analytics for like 3 4, I don't know what, and do ABCD. Right now we have AI, we don't need that analytics. So what are you going to tell me you learned, or what, how are you going to transfer additional skills? So that becomes very important. For
Mm,
education, why I'm saying education would be two, because of two things. The learning patterns have really changed.
mhm,
Um, and one of the few interesting things I can use as an example that may sound totally off is, I remember there was the world champion who learned, yeah, a world Olympics champion who learned javelin through YouTube. So
Yoga.
you tell me, yes, something.
Mhm,
We will just Google it. But you tell me, even if I go get my saucers from my kitchen and I try and
mhm,
learn javelin, I'm not going to learn it so fast and so precise. So
mm,
education can be done in very different forms. He didn't have to go through training, school, or anything to learn, but he achieved it. Then again, you go back into factory settings and you think about an office kind of work. And I'll pick the basics, Python. You can learn Python from whichever space you're in, as long as you have internet. It doesn't matter. Whichever corner of the world you're in, you will learn Python. Let's keep
mhm,
aside the part of the certification. It's the way you demonstrate it. So your experience and how you keep applying it would really matter. But at the
mhm,
end of the day, what I would say is what is changing at the workspace that is becoming maybe difficult for all organizations to embrace is where you put education aside and you say somebody can come and work for us maybe for 2 3 years and gain more skills than the undergraduate they have and then move on. There are quite a number of organizations right now that are putting aside the undergraduates, that are putting aside the masters. Yes, it's a good to have, but it doesn't mean you're the right person. It doesn't mean you're qualified. It means you have ticked a box to
Mm-hmm.
expectation, but we need to see
Mm-hmm.
how that can apply through the
Okay.
experience. And it means applying what you've studied. Yes.
Alrighty. Okay, understood. So I suppose therefore then if I'm going through the recruitment process using the STAR model to demonstrate that I actually have experience in this place
Yeah.
would be my best bet to not get eliminated.
Yes.
Is it
Yes.
okay? All right.
Correct. And that's why I keep telling you, SWOT for me is better because it is the opportunities that you see in the organization. What
Mm-hmm.
can you make them even learn from you, and what can you learn from them that you can
Mm-hmm.
reflect and leverage and say, you know what, if I'm able to combine
Mm-hmm.
these skills and the skills you're going to train me, I believe the organization would gain more. So just finding balance there is important.
Alrighty. Okay. So balance STAR and SWOT. So,
Yes,
final question, Dorcas. And this was
yes,
asked in many different ways in the survey. So, I've just
yes,
summarized it where people are basically asking some job postings show the salary and some
yes.
don't. What advises this decision from a recruiter's point of view? Some you decide you'll tell me this is the range, others you're like, yeah, no. Then I'll come into the interview and you'll ask me, what is your salary expectation? Don't you have a budget? Why are you asking me?
I'm laughing because I knew that was the next question. You'd be like, what's your salary? How come you have a job if you don't have a budget for it? So
Mhm,
let me say these are eliminator questions. So the
mhm,
essence of ensuring that you have a salary can be based on two things. One,
mhm,
owing to the fact that the structures in the organization have to clearly state that to just eliminate anyone who doesn't feel they are, within that bracket and they would want to come off it. Most of the
mhm,
time, the interesting fact about majority of the people who state the salary, it reflects the fact most, and that's the word I've used, it reflects the
mhm,
fact that they have a salary structure and a well proper salary structure, some of them.
mhm,
But the thing is this, for the majority who also don't post and they put basically putting the salary, the essence of it is how do I ensure that my competitor doesn't know I pay my people this much? Because if they know I'm paying people this much, then the next thing is they're going to pull my people out because they might offer more. So there's also that shift mindset. However, I like the fact that by people trying to eliminate bias, by people trying to make sure equality is there when it comes to people applying for roles. I know in it should be in New York, right?
mhm,
Right from the end of 2023, if I'm not wrong, they started opening up and saying that they need roles to reflect on that particular rate they're going to pay per hour, per month, per year. Just put that amount there.
mhm,
What's the worst that will happen? Whether your competitor knows or not, they will still pay a consultant to find out how much you're paying your people, and they will benchmark on it. And with the information we have out there, people are able to get as much data as possible. I'm actually for openness. I find it easier. And just to answer why sometimes you will not put it, and then during the interview, is that's the time I'm trying to see if you're going to match up to our brackets. So it just cuts off. I always encourage people to know that you can call in and request how much is the bracket for this role even before you apply. Because at
oh,
that given point,
mhm,
you're finding out because the role already has been put. So even before you apply, you just ask. I mean, I'm thinking of applying and I just want to know what's the salary bracket. Now, of course, a closed-end minded HR profession would say that was really unprofessional. But just think about it. Am I about to go buy a shoe that I don't know how much it is, and I'm going to go to the counter and just pull my card and say, run it? So, in retrospect, it is a whole transaction process. We need to learn to put it out there the same way we're saying these are the qualifications we're looking for. It just becomes very important for us to also have what is required out there. So, basically, I would say that I'm happy quite a number of different forums here in Kenya are opening up so that people are able to understand and know more about their salaries, and for people to actually have them in advertisements. It becomes encouraging. As much as sometimes those salaries may not be to the market expectation, the fact they have put, it's also declaring that's the budget they have, which is
They have.
important.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it's important because when I draw from the conversations that I have had, both with university students who are looking for industrial attachments, fresh graduates who are looking for connections to get jobs, and in the other professional groups that I'm in, people looking for the next job to transition or even looking for a new job because they were declared redundant in their previous role. One of the running themes that I am coming across is I spent money to come for the interview only for me to realize your budget is nowhere near what my expectation is, and there's a bit of
Yeah.
frustration coming in from that space. So I don't know if it's an integrity issue or what we will call it, but it will be nice. It will be nice if more organizations
Yeah.
like you say they are open about their budget and the salary ranges for roles. We have come to the end of today's session, Dorcas. So, and we are over by 2 minutes. I'll just ask you for any closing remarks before I close it off.
I would say, as a closing remark, people need to be more open about the changes that are happening in their workspaces. One, because a lot of applications are coming in place that are going to help simplify the process flow when it comes to recruitment. But it's also very, very important for you to put yourself out there to demonstrate your skill. Putting yourself out there, especially in LinkedIn or in every other platform, doesn't necessarily mean that you're posting every day about, hey, I'm at work, hey, I'm doing this. It just means sharing information of what your understanding is in. I have seen people gain scholarships. I've seen people gain a lot of things by doing that. We're in the age of information. So if you have something to share it focusing on the place you want to see yourself in the next 3 or 5 years. Don't share what everybody knows now. Don't leverage on what's trending. Leverage on information that is useful in the next 2 or I would say 3 months ahead of time. Thank you very much and all the best as you apply for your roles. This space is very good. There are quite a number of professionals coming in. Please stay tuned for more and learn and apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dorcas. Guys, go follow Dorcas on LinkedIn. She has very, very informative information on her page. That said, thank you so much for making the time today. Thank you for the additional 4 minutes that you have granted to Dorcas and myself. Once again, Dorcas, thank you. Thank you very much for making the time.
Yes.
That said, goodbye, everyone. Have a
Goodbye.
fantastic evening, balance of day, morning, afternoon. Bye.